Okay, welcome back to our portion of how many bits. When we talk about bits, we're talking about 32 or 64. So we're going to be talking about the central processing unit, also called the processor. Now, it partly determines which operating system can be installed. One major consideration is the number of bits a CPU processes at a time. Now, all desktop and laptop processors sold today are either from AMD or from Intel. They can process 64 bits at a time, but older processors handled only 32 bits at a time. To which type of operating system you install, you would need to know if you have a 64 or 32-bit operating system. You need to be aware of three categories of processors to determine what operating system you're going to install. 32-bit processors. These are known as the x86 processor. It's important to know that because Intel used the number 86 in the model number of these earlier processors. And these processors must use a 32-bit operating system. Processors that use the underlying 32-bit processing with 64-bit instructions, these processors are known as the x36-64-bit processors. Now, AMD was the first to produce one, the AMD Athlon, and it was called the AMD 64. Now, Intel followed with its version of the Pentium 4 processors and called the technology Extended Memory 64 technology, or the EM64T. Now, because of their hybrid nature, these processors can handle a 32-bit operating system or a 64-bit operating system. Now, all desktop or laptop processors made after 2007 are of this type. Now, 64-bit processors. Intel makes several 64-bit processors for workstations or servers that use fully implemented 64-bit processing, including the Itanium and the Xeon processors. Now, Intel calls the technology the IA64, but they're also called the x64 processors. Now, the Itanium and the Xeon are primarily found on our servers. Now, they're not compatible with 32-bit processing and therefore require a 64-bit operating system. Windows 2000 is a 32-bit operating system. Windows XP Professional x64 edition was a 64-bit operating system, and all the other Windows XP editions are 32-bit operating systems. Vista, Home Basic, Home Premium, Business, Enterprise, and Ultimate all come in either 32 or a 64-bit version. Now, what's really cool with the Vista, when you purchased the retail version of the Ultimate Edition, because you spent so much stinking money, you got the 32-bit DVD and the 64-bit DVD. They were included in the same package. Now, for other Vista editions, you must request a 64-bit or DVD from Microsoft after you purchase the retail version of the operating system. The OEM version of each Vista operating system and 7 can be purchased in a 32-bit or a 64-bit code. Now, most modern desktop and laptop processors today can handle either a 32 or a 64-bit operating system, which are sometimes referred to as the x86 or the x64 OS. Now, keep these discussion points in mind when you're deciding which to install. Point 1. 64-bit processing is faster than 32-bit processing because the CPU is handling more bits at once. However, a 64-bit operating system requires more resources than a 32-bit operating system. Point 2. A 64-bit operating system requires that device drivers operating in kernel mode be 64-bit drivers. Now remember, kernel mode would be how we access the hardware. Now, these 64-bit drivers must be available from the device manufacturer. And point 3. An application is compiled to process 64 or 32 bits. A 64-bit operating system can run either 64-bit applications or 32-bit applications, but 64-bit applications are faster. And also, 64-bit applications cannot run on a 32-bit operating system. Fourth point and last, a 32-bit operating system can only address up to 4 gig of memory. More than that might be installed in the motherboard, but the operating system cannot use it because it doesn't have enough memory addresses to assign to the physical memory. Now, a 64-bit operating system theoretically can address up to a whole terabyte of memory, although in practice most motherboards can only hold up to 12 to 16 gig of memory. A terabyte, if you don't know, is roughly 1,000 gig or 1,000,000,000,000 bytes. I lied. 0.5. If you open many applications at the same time and have high computing needs and enough hard drive space and memory, you can benefit from a 64-bit operating system. To get the most out of it, the processor, motherboard, operating system drivers, and applications must all be 64-bit. And you should have installed the maximum amount of memory that the motherboard will support. For example, if you purchase a new laptop today, typically you can throw in about 16 gig of RAM. But in most cases, Windows 7, Windows 8 will run super fast on 8 gig and give you the best advantages that you need to get out of your Windows 7 64-bit operating system. Often a manufacturer will install a 32-bit operating system on a computer that could support a 64-bit operating system. Investigate in 7 to find out what type of processor and operating system installed. Click Start, right-click Computer, select Properties from the shortcut menu, and then the results will be shown as they are on the screen here behind me, as they are here, showing possibly a Core Duo CPU. Now this CPU here could have handled a 64-bit operating system, but the manufacturer put on 32. Another important tip you might want to know about 64-bit computing: when Microsoft publishes a patch or update from Windows on its website, some patches are designed or designated for specific processors, and error messages will use terminology that might be confusing if you don't understand the terms. So let's follow these guidelines when reading error messages or documentation from the Microsoft site. The term x86 refers to a 32-bit processor and to 32-bit operating systems. For example, you need to download a patch from Microsoft to fix your Windows 7 problem that you're having with USB devices. The article on the Microsoft website that applies to your problem says to download the patch if you're using a Windows 7 x86 based version. Now, you'll take that to mean that you use this patch if you're using a 32-bit version of your operating system. The term x86-64 would refer to a 64-bit operating system or a 32-bit processor that processes 64-bit instructions, like the Intel Core 2 Duo or the 64-bit AMD processor, the AMD 64. Okay. The AMD 64 refers specifically to those types of AMD processors. So for example, a Windows error might be, you're attempting to load an x86-64 operating system. Take that to mean you're attempting to load a 64-bit operating system on a computer that might have a hybrid 32-bit/64-bit processor installed, such as the Athlon 64 or the Intel Core 2 Duo. The term IA64 refers specifically to the 64-bit Intel processors, such as the Xeon or the Itanium. Now, for example, you are selecting a utility to download from the Microsoft website. And one choice of utilities specifies an IA64 platform. Only select this choice if you've installed an Itanium or a Xeon processor. Now, by the way, a techie uses the word platform to mean the hardware and software on which other software is running. So in this context, the operating system's platform is the processor. And the term x64 refers to 64-bit operating systems. So for example, Microsoft offers two versions of Windows 7, Home Premium, the x86 version, and the x64 version. And that pretty much concludes our how many bits, 32 or 64. It is important that you remember the A+ 220-701 Essentials exam expects you to know the difference between XP and Vista 32 and 64-bit versions with the Windows 7 amendment. You're also expected to be familiar with the terms 32-bit, 64-bit, x86, and x64. Come on back when you're done your online assessments and any other labs that I have assigned for this chapter, and we'll be discussing the Windows 2000 XP and how to work around them. Catch you later.